Couple key things. I want to recognize somebody in this room. We have kind of a celebrity type status with us today. William Besserdick, one of the co-founders of the four-wheel drive, his great-grandson is in the room. So, Chad, would you like to stand up and take, so we do, go ahead, nope, I'm gonna put him on the spot. Chad and I have become really good friends, family over the years, so this is the great-grandson of William Besserdick. I'm gonna collect my $20 later. First thing first, I have nothing to do with the company. Of course, the company's pretty much evolved into Seagrave, been absorbed through Seagrave, so I have nothing to do with FWD company or Seagrave company as well. So I want to make that disclaimer. What I'm going to give today is about almost 3 decades of research. There's a lot of speculation, stories that are out there. What I will share with you is this is stuff that I've done over years of research. As you know, the Stamps family is here. That's the descendant of William. But I'm also really good friends with the Zacco's descendant. What was it, 2018, Chad? We were able to get 2018, 2019. Everybody always thought that there was a rift between the two families. There wasn't, but it was cool to have both families back in the machine shop where it all started. After they got done, they were able to go through the Seagrave plant and had a special tour of the Seagrave plant. So the great-grandson of William, the great-grandson of Otto, and then the granddaughter of William went on that journey. We actually had pictures taken with him with the battleship. So with that, I'm gonna start this off. It's the early years of FWD. Like I said, there's a lot of misconceptions out there. There's a lot of as-told stories out there. Mine come from years of research, and if anybody in the room has some new evidence or some new stuff out there that they'd like to present, I'd love to hear it, because history is always evolving. We always learn. What we knew 20 years ago is totally different because of research technology and all the other data that's out there to be done. Who knows where FWD, the four-wheel drive auto company, was started? Not Milwaukee. And there's Clintonville, Wisconsin.
Manawak.
No, not Manawak, but Clintonville, Wisconsin. I do like to walk around a little bit, so I'll use the mic when I can, and then I'll also get loud, so I'm trying to blow Texas mic off my shirt here. So here we go. After Clintonville was incorporated in 1886, they had everything that they needed except for one thing. They didn't have a machine shop. They didn't have anything up there to repair farm machines. What a lot of the people did at the day is they went down to Appleton. They made the long trip, either by horse and buggy or by rail. Local businesses realized that there was a necessity that was needed in that community. The person that really had some forethought into this was DJ Rohr. Him and his family owned the local lumber mill right on the Pigeon River, where the dam was up in the day in Clintonville. He made numerous trips down to Appleton to have stuff repaired. He would go down and get people to come up. Of course, back in the day, you can make the trip now about 45 minutes from Clintonville to Appleton. Back then, I'm sure it took him several years. So during his trips down to Appleton, he met a machinist down there. That machinist was William Besserdick. William was working in one of the local machine shops down there. DJ liked his work, liked what he did. DJ convinced William to come take a look at Clintonville. Come up there and see what they had to offer, because they really were in need of a machine shop. William went up there, took a look at the place. Took a fancy to the place. But he also knew if they were going to start a machine shop, they also needed a blacksmith. So that blacksmith was his brother-in-law, Otto Zacco. Otto was actually in Bessemer, Michigan at the time with his father-in-law, August Besserdick. Otto was married to William's sister. So in order to make this adventure successful, William knew that he was going to need Otto's help. He was going to need the family's help. So they both went to Clintonville. And they both liked the area, figured out how they were going to try and get there, what they wanted to do. This is what Clintonville looked like about the time that the pair was wanting to come up. This photo is really, really important to them because whenever they went up there, one of the things that DJ wanted to do was offer them a building. One of his buildings had just come available, but it was an old church. The brother-in-laws looked at it and was thinking to themselves, how could we make this in to what our needs were to better serve the community? So the building that they looked at was a little 24 by 60 little church. I always botch it. It was the Christmas church, I believe. Christus Church. So Daryl's from Clintonville, and he likes to correct me from time to time. But it was the Lutheran church, and I appreciate Daryl's help. So they offered it up, and it really wasn't going to be conducive to where it was. If you look just to the left of the water tower, that's where the church was.
The near one.
So as they were thinking about it, they had a vision to change it. This was the 1890. 1889, 1890 is when they were thinking about this venture. But with not having a place to call their own, and the businessmen there in town wanted to get these two brother-in-laws here, they paid $125 per piece of land. The piece of land still exists up there. Here's William and Otto. This was taken out of a 1910 pamphlet that I have on FWD. William, born May 4th, 1867 in Milwaukee. Otto, 1862 in Greenville. So they were both Wisconsinites. Now, again, William learned his trade as a machinist, going all over the country working at different railroads. Otto was a blacksmith. He stayed in Wisconsin and did a lot of his stuff and learned all his trade in Wisconsin. So that little bitty land that they had donated to him for $125 by the business leaders built them this. The cool thing about this is this building, most of the building is still there. It's the foundation of the FWD Museum. This is still well built, well constructed, and erect in Clintonville. The cool thing about this whole building is William's father, August, built this building for him. William's father did carriages, was a woodworker, knew how to do it. That's why the pair up in Bessemer, Michigan, Otto and August worked well together. Otto knew the blacksmithing, and August knew all about how to build carriages and wood. So this building was constructed by William's father. It's a little bit different nowadays, but the core structure still remains up there. During the construction, they were looking for equipment. Of course, Clintonville was off the beaten path. A road went through there, but they were looking. So as August started to build this building, William and Otto went to Milwaukee. William had spent some time down in the shops in Milwaukee and the railroads. William knew Milwaukee pretty well. So they started acquiring most of their equipment from Milwaukee and then training it back up to Clintonville. This is one of the earliest advertisements that I've been able to find on Zockel and Besserdick. The Clintonville Machine Company is what they called it whenever they moved to Clintonville. Doors opened about 1892 from some newspaper articles that we've been able to locate. And a couple of the things that they worked in the grist mills. They were able to repair a lot of stuff. They become repair specialists. You name it. Steam power plants. William was good with steam. He worked in the railroad. William could pretty much do anything in the railroad. Engines, you name it. Thrashing machines. They all loved to do it. So as their venture started to grow, don't pay attention to that vehicle there. It's not supposed to be there, but yeah, if you look in the background there to the left, you'll see tractors. But this was another photo that was taken of the machine shop back in the day. So they did machines. That's what they did. That's what they started out to do. None of them really wanted to start out on an adventure of building vehicles. Well, that all changed about 1906. They ended up buying a 1906 Rio car from one of their nephews in Clintonville. It was the first car in Clintonville. Still no paved roads then, and it was a hit. Everybody in the town loved it so much that Dr. Finney, who was the doctor in town at the time, decided he needed a Rio, so he bought the second one in the community. Special photo here. This photo comes from the Stamps family. That is William Besser-Dick on the Rio. What makes that Rio so special? And this is where I'm gonna dive into a little bit of an expansion here. There's two stories that have been told, actually 3 stories over the years that have been told. One of them is William was 2 miles north of Embarrass, got stuck in the sand with 2 gentlemen that had come to the shop and needed some work done. They had just bought this Rio, and he says, you know, gentlemen, hop on here. Let's go for a ride. They got up there about 2 miles north of Embarrass, and sand, mud, and everything else, and it got stuck. William asked the 2 gentlemen to get out and grab the spokes of the front wheel. They did. They helped the wheel turn. Because back in the day, it wasn't 4-wheel drive. All you had was rear-wheel drive. So you imagine 1906, 1907, in dirt roads, mud, and sand. So that is the actual vehicle that the whole 4-wheel drive concept had come about. So, yep, they grabbed those spokes right there. Second story is his brother-in-law, Otto, was in Appleton with the vehicle. Went down an embankment. He got down in the embankment, tried to go up forward. Well, he wasn't able to do that successfully going forward, which the engine's in the front. That's where all your weight is. Yeah, your drive wheels are in the back. So what he ended up doing is he had the forethought to turn around, spin around, and drive up the hill backwards. Third story is Otto had read it in a scientific magazine. So my theory is William was the one that probably was the one that come up. It made the more practical sense. It made the more sense that they got stuck. Why would you drive a vehicle down into a ravine or into an embankment? But I could see it really getting stuck in sand, because this is what the roads in Clintonville looked like in 1906, 1907. Wet, muddy, good old Wisconsin winters. You know, it took months for the roads to thaw out back then. You know, riding in those cars were not all a great pleasure. You know, you had every weather element that you had to deal with. So whenever William asked these 2 gentlemen to get off and pull that, he pondered on that and he thought about that for a long time. Here's one of the things that I love to share with everybody, and I've talked both with the Zacco family and the Besser-Dick family. The 2 men did not know what the other one was. You know, they all knew what they were doing at the time. It was a small machine shop. You saw the machine shop. Back then, they were brother-in-laws. They were family. They didn't hide everything from each other. They worked together. You know, they complemented each other. So the invention of the ball and socket. We led to kind of the 2 stories that are out there about how they thought about this. March 24th, 1908, they were granted their first patent. Here's a copy of the patent. You can see it's a pretty simple, rudimentary. A couple things to note. Back then, there was already some 4-wheel drive patents out there. I might be misspeaking, but if my memory serves me right, there was about 208 different patents at the time that were out there. Some of them were successful. What made the brother-in-laws different from everybody else is they were able to build it and prove that it worked. Another patent, August 1st, 1907. And it was patented. The application was 1907. One of the key things that I've been able to understand is back then it would take over a year to almost 2 years to get the patents. So as you can see here, it took almost a year for them to get that. Their concept was actually put into action. This is a newer, modern type picture of all this. So they had this great grand scheme and everything else. What are we going to do with this? We really can't change the Rio because it's already a built vehicle. So they built their own. This was the first successful four-wheel drive that the pair had made. This is called the Steamer. Here's Otto sitting on the back. This is William. This is Doc Finney right here. This is DJ Rohr that got the pair to come. And this mystery man right there is their nephew, Arthur Piotr. The same Rio that they bought it from come from Arthur. Arthur and his brother owned a little mechanic shop up there, and they bought the first vehicle from them. But this is the first vehicle, first prototype. There's a problem with this. If you notice, that's a steam-powered engine. It's actually a Walker water steam engine that they bought from Kentucky. Most people in the room probably never knew that. Never knew the name of the engine. But it proved unreliable in the Wisconsin winters. Whenever the brother-in-laws had their concept done, they started in the early summer and all that, and they didn't have it finished until wintertime. Well, in December, you can see what it does. Another example, you can just see all that steam coming over. Again, Arthur Piotr, William Besserdick, Dr. Finney, Otto Zacco, just the unknown kid. We don't know who he is, but one of these days I'll figure out the mystery to that one. But you can see that there's a lot of steam blowing off. What would happen is he would get so far, it'd run out of steam. He'd have to stop, let it build up steam, and then take off. One of the key factors to point out here is Otto was a blacksmith, William was a machinist and worked around steam. So I can see why they use steam. And I have been able, with Daryl's help, Daryl and I have had a great debate over this over the years. We do have a pretty good location of where all their testing was done. And it was several blocks away from where the machine shop that they opened up. William and Otto was frustrated because they had a great concept. All four wheels were turning, all four wheels were spinning, all four wheels were pulling them. They didn't have an engine that would be reliable enough to where they could go long distances. So with that, they ended up building their second vehicle, and you'll hear some people reference it as the first four-wheel drive. Well, clearly the Steamer was the first four-wheel drive. This is probably what we want to call the first production four-wheel drive that the pair built. So here, this is what is known as the Battleship today. It is still alive at the FWD Museum in Clintonville. I would encourage you to go up there and take a look at it. It's still alive. It's a little bit different. It's got seats on it now, and a little bit more riding. This is Walter Olin. There's William again at the wheel. If anybody knows who this gentleman is here, please see me afterwards. This is my other mystery man. DJ Rohr, and then now Otto. I'll share a little secret. Of course, William and Otto come to Clintonville in 1891. Well, Mr. DJ Rohr took a fancy to William's other sister. And in 1897, he married William's other sister. So, three of them were family at this time. So, they had a concept. And what they thought about next was, we need a company. So that company became the Badger four-wheel drive. And it produced the first successful all-wide drive chassis in 1909. Their dream of creating the four-wheel drive was now a reality. Now they had a company. The three investors in the company, the early investors, was of course Otto, William, and then Doc Finney. Doc Finney provided a lot of financial backing for the pair. And the brother-in-laws provided the knowledge to do that. So, now that they had the company, they needed to start showing people off. William would take it out and try and advertise to drum up more stock. Otto would take it and drive more stock, try and help get more stock investors. This is the battleship. This was a neat little advertisement that they created in 1911. It was reproduced, I think about 1974, but it's pretty cool how this does. Pretty special. What they ended up doing from the steamer is they took parts and pieces of the steamer and put them into the battleship. They didn't use all the steamer parts. What changed is they went and got a Continental engine to put in it, a nice 4-cylinder gas engine to help give them that longevity and that sustaining power to move all 4 wheels. It's an all-time 4-wheel drive. It is still an all-time 4-wheel drive. It's kind of cool, neat little advertisement they had done on that. One of the cool things was in 1910, I do have a one booklet that come out of West Allis, and they would take the vehicle down to the Wisconsin State Fair. And the one booklet that I have is about 15 pages advertising the battleship. This is one of the photos out of the battleship and that thing. So Dr. Finney, kind of the only thing that I can come up with is he was just getting a little restless. He had made a trip, had come back, and there wasn't much progress on the vehicle and of the selling of the stock. Dr. Finney decided to pull his money out of the company. Left the 2 brother-in-laws not defeated, but looking for new financials. They had to repay some of Dr. Finney's interest, but he had not paid it all to begin with. So with not having a financial backer at the time, but a great concept, they were looking at it. Here's the battleship, kind of what it looks like today. Nowadays, it's got a windshield. Another Wisconsin testing it, and there you can see it with the windshield. The only gentleman that I can identify right here is August Besserdick. That is William's father. So I'll share a couple more pictures. Here's the battleship in front of the Ward House. It was a famous hotel back in the day in Clintonville. What I think is really cool is you see the horse and the buggy over here. This was it says transfer lines on it, so that must have been the early cab back in the day. But here's the battleship. It would seat 8 back in the day. So as I'd said, Dr. Finney had said, boys, I'm done. I don't want to support it. So with that being said, is when Dr. Finney backed away, there was an attorney in town named Walter Olin. Walter Olin stepped up and had provided some more financial money. The company went through a reorganization when that took place. Walter Olin and the board of directors, a new board of directors was elected, and they decided to change the name in 1910 from the Badger 4-wheel drive just to the 4-wheel drive auto company. The earliest purchaser, this is Matuzak, August Matuzak. He purchased the first production battleship. He owned number 1 in Clintonville. There's August and his first battleship that was produced. If you notice, the engine is square now instead of curved. This was the second battleship that was produced for the Ward House. That horse and buggy that you've seen in the first photo, I'm sure replaced the horse and buggy with a new modern vehicle. Not for sure where this one falls in line here. I'm a little irritated that they're laying all over the hood, so I can't see the vehicle more, so I could get some more indications off of it. But I don't know where this falls in line in the order. I know that it's not Matuzak's, and I know that it's not the Ward House. So with that, they have new leadership, new organization. William is still with the company, and Otto is still with the company. 1911, William is still there. Otto sells his shares of stock to Walter Olin. There's speculation. There's written documentation of what took place during that time. And, who knows? Otto's not here with us to kind of explain how and why he sold this stock. But it still left William being the only single largest shareholder of the company. 1911, they start, this is one of the battleship's chassis. It was named the Nancy Hank. The Nancy Hank became the demo. Now they have a demo to really start showing people. You can read it here. The governor of Wisconsin's there to oversee the testing. A lot of interest because now you have a vehicle that will go anywhere on the Wisconsin roads in the weather. Here's the Nancy Hank again. That's pretty good mud. That's pretty good. That's plowing through there. Here's the Nancy Hank a little bit later, a little bit different. It was used for a mail vehicle for many, many years. This vehicle is in the FWD Museum, sits proudly next to the battleship. Here's the battleship doing a test. Clintonville used to have a fireman's festival. So right here, this is pulling 28 men in a hook and ladder. So that is the battleship pulling all that. And if anybody can identify any of these men in this photo, please see me afterwards. So 1911 comes. They're building some vehicles in that little shop that they have. Business is good. They need to build their own building. So this is the first part of what is now the FWD/Seagrave fire apparatus building up there. This building still stands. This is what's listed as building number 1. Pretty cool. So they had started to make a new building and started to move from the machine shop in 1911. So about 1912, 1913, you can see the building. They've added a couple more things to that in 1911. 1912 comes. Uncle Sam's interested in this big horseless carriage, 4-wheel drive that can go anywhere. Well, this is Captain Williams, who made the trip from Washington to come out and see what all the fuss and the hubbub was about. He liked this vehicle so much that whenever it was built, this was called the Scout Car. And he loved it so much, January 18th, 1912, the military purchased their first 4-wheel drive vehicle for the price of $1,904 from the FWD. This vehicle was shipped to Washington, D.C., and put through rigorous testing. February 8th, the Scout Car participated in what was called the U.S. Army test that spanned 1,504 miles and went from Washington, D.C. to Fort Benjamin Harris near Indianapolis. Only 3 trucks completed that race. The FWD Scout Car was the first one. It was the first to arrive. Now, I will share this little folklore, and I've found some evidence, but not concrete evidence, that they used the Scout Car along the way to help pull out some of the other vehicles along this testing. Here's the Scout Car. Again, this gentleman right here is Walter Olin. At the time, he was the president of the company. Frank Dorn was their first kind of official test driver. Frank is the one that ran it in that trip from Washington, D.C. to Indianapolis. Again, this was 1912. There they are. That's a picture taken during the race. So, yeah, pretty cool, isn't it? But it made the trip. Now, I won't hold it against them for putting the chains on it, though. So, as they started to progress, of course, they had what is, I believe, to be 10 battleships were made. There's only one that has been found or known to exist, and that rests in the museum in Clintonville. World War I, 1914 comes about. and I'll share this with this group, William became disgusted with how the company was ran. For 1912 was a big year. William did try, since he was the single largest stockholder, he did try to move the company to Appleton. He was just disappointed on how it was being ran. They had brought in a engineer from overseas named Battenberg. They would really pick William's brain, but then they would also argue with William, saying that what he was doing and what he thought wasn't going to work. We do have documentation from the Stamps family that kind of talks about this error. So William had tried to move it to Appleton. He knew a lot of businessmen in Appleton. He was almost very successful in moving the company to Appleton. There's some articles that you can find in the Appleton Post-Crescent that date this time. And they did have another stockholder. The other stockholders, he would have, between him and William, they would have been able to take control of the company and move it down there. They reviewed his stock purchases, and then the board decided that his stock purchases were null and void. So William could not use those stocks to help take back the company that he built. So William left a little disgusted in 1914. Chad's going to give a presentation tomorrow on the early history of Oshkosh Truck. He's going to dive into that because it's an important part of Oshkosh Truck. But when the war broke out, Uncle Sam already knew that FWD could build some really good vehicles. They come to FWD and said, we need a workhorse to move troops. The good thing was they were already in business with Great Britain. They were building some trucks for Great Britain. This is what the plant looked like at the start of the war whenever they were shipping the trucks. The first truck was shipped to Great Britain, the first Model B. This is the model that they call the Model B. This is one of the prime movers of equipment and men during the war. And of course there was other companies too. Liberty was a big company that was making World War I trucks at the time, but this is a great look into the family, or into the factory. Nice little photo shoot of what the trucks could carry. So this was Booster Day. So as they built these trucks and the U.S. started to buy trucks from FWD, they set up a camp in Clintonville to train. They would send their troops to Clintonville. They would set up a camp behind the FWD factory. And soldiers spent months there learning how to operate these trucks. They were all painted pretty much the same, had this nice little camo scheme to them. That's good, you caught it out, different wheels. I'm gonna back that up just a little bit. You can see one set of wheels, the wooden spoke wheels. Those are metal, those are solid. I haven't been able to put all that together yet, but one of these days I will, about why the different wheels. So, go ahead.
Because they could.
Because they could, you're absolutely right, because they could. I'm going to put that in the presentation, I'm going to make that in my notes section, because they could.
50, we're giving it up.
I will. How about 1995?
Don't change the bolts.
Okay, 50, okay. So whenever they started to leave town, there was two ways they could get these trucks out of town. They either had to put them on rail or they had to drive them out. So this is one of the truck trains, and you can see how far that stretches back as they were taking them to the war.
You didn't call that a convoy?
I don't think they did back then. I think back then the postcards that I have said it was a train.
How many were in that contract?
That's a great question, Darren. I do not know off the head. And you bring up a good point. There's been discussion and debates over the years of how many trucks the military actually purchased, or how many were built during the war. Some say 20,000. I've seen a low number of 12,000, and some say upwards of 30,000. You know, if I was a betting man, I would say probably in between 15 to 20,000 trucks. But there's no real true record of what's out there on how many they built. So during World War I, of course, the United States entered the war and they were off. FWD, there were a lot of women that went to work for FWD. Anybody know the first woman driver of a Model B back during World War I? Daryl, do you know?
The very first one?
The first one that gets credit.
Well, first one who gets credit is, her name escapes me now.
That's what happens when I put him on the spot. Mildred Sawyer. There's conflicts. Luella Bates is also in there as well. But Mildred, for many, many years after FWD had started a foundation, the Museum Foundation, Mildred, for many, many years, was the docent of the museum. But pretty cool.
Which one's Mildred?
Not for sure. But if you find out, I'll give you another 50.
Okay.
So there was different variations of the Model Bs. They used this as a light plant. That's some creative ingenuity to put that together. You know, I don't know, I'd be afraid that that would fall over back then, but it just goes to show how well the trucks are built. I will share this with you, and it's always been, and I'll go back a couple slides. See the fuel tank there? That's the only fuel tank that I know, or what I've seen in pictures, photographs, postcards, that was built that way. The early trucks, if I can get back to it, the early trucks
That's behind the seat.
had a round truck, had a round fuel tank. The later trucks had a more oblong fuel tank. That square fuel tank is the first one that I've seen in photographs, pictures, postcards. I do also have a large FWD collection.
Back to the picture in the room, I think, where you find that round tank, right?
Okay. Yeah. So here they are, still lined up.
Wood mills.
So it takes us back to Otto. This picture was taken right before Otto sold the machine shop back to the FWD company. One of the key things is I didn't share yet, but I will share. When they reorganized the company, William I. Otto had sold the machine shop to the Badger four-wheel drive. They were able, during the reorganization, to maintain and gain control back of the machine shop. During the war, of course, they used the machine shop because it was a machine shop. So this is Otto right before he had sold back to the FWD company to make the building museum. Here's William, a very aged man, on the battleship. A couple key things that I always love to add into this presentation. Like I said, there's always the as told to me stories, a lot of misconceptions out there, a lot of, well, he did this, who did that. There's a great book that was written by a priest back in the day, 1937. It's called The History of Clintonville, by Father Diedrich. Father Diedrich, and we do have documentation that, you know, Father Diedrich interviewed everybody involved at the time of the four-wheel drive auto company. He interviewed Otto, he interviewed William, he interviewed Dr. Finney, DJ Rohr, and Walter Olin. And at the time, they all told the same story. So that's why Dr. Finney, or Father Diedrich had wrote the book, 1937 History of Clintonville. All of them were still alive. You'll see nowadays that some books, some publications has kind of basically written William out of the story completely. That's not the case. You know, they were both there in that small little building stuff together. But the story really started to change after Otto had passed away. But yeah, if you're interested in the history of the four-wheel drive, I do know the book is online. You can pull up the PDF of the history of Clintonville from 1937. One of the key things is, you know, there were depositions, and you can go to the Waupaca County and get copies of all this, of the back and forth, but the majority of this was all done after Otto had passed away. And Father Diedrich did a deposition that he had interviewed everybody involved in the parties. A couple years, I think it was I want to say the 40s, mid 40s. There was a book, Masters of Mass Production, that was written by, I can't remember the author, Christie. Nope, it was Christie. That kind of started to write William out, and then in the 50s, the Troyer book come out. You can get online and you can find articles out there where the FWD company sponsored Troyer to write that book. So with this, one more. So the cool thing is I had Chad stand up. I met Chad in 2017 during this parade. So that's me driving the battleship in 2017. I was honored to be able to drive the battleship in that parade. I was told that I would have riders that was going to be with me, and the parade's starting to move, and I'm by myself, and I'm like, okay, I'm going. Well, I see these people waving their hands and all this stuff running down the sidewalk, and I stop, and they all get in, and I guess they're supposed to be with me. But yeah, we, lo and behold, they were the riders that were going to ride with me that day. I drive them around. I'm talking to Chad. He's sitting right next to me. I'm like, man, how cool is this? We're riding the same roads, and I start telling him some of the stuff I knew at the history in 2017, and we're talking and all this stuff, and we get back to the museum, and lo and behold, he tells me who he is. So I didn't know the family until 2017. I always wondered if William's family was out there. Like I said, I've been for over 2 decades now, almost 3. My first trip to Clintonville was in 1999. And my whole fascination with FWD all started because of Oshkosh Truck. And then when I started to learn more about William Vesterdick and saying, oh my goodness, he also started FWD. So you'll hear people say that Oshkosh is a spinoff from FWD. That's not the case.
Is that safety glass?
No. No. So if I hit a cow driving that day, yeah, I'd be in trouble.